Hello, hello. Oh, wait.
Hey there.
Hi.
Hello.
Hi. Hello, hello.
Mary, is that your real background?
No.
It looks really nice.
If it were like my Kindle, I'd have probably that many books, but not in real life.
I love my Kindle because I like to read right before bed and I like to read on my side and I can't really wear my glasses lying the way I like to lie. And so I just bump up the text size so that I can read without my glasses and it's amazing.
Hmm. I've not tried that. I I don't read. Well, I do read. Sorry. I shouldn't be trying to do two things at once. Um, Yeah, I haven't tried that because I do have a Kindle, but a lot of times I get lazy and I just read on my phone.
Oh, really? Oh, wow.
I
But you'd be
know.
like, I don't know, it's so small.
Yeah, I still have decent eyes. It's funny though, my husband doesn't, so I tell him he's old, even though I tell myself I'm old. So, like, nobody take that as anything insulting because I just stretch out in bed and hurt my knee or something. So, it's a joke around here. Hi, Maria. I haven't seen you in a while.
I know. I feel like we just have a ton of meetings here scheduled on Friday afternoons and they just all conflict. So
Yeah.
here. I missed Tuesday as well. So I was bummed about that.
Did I do, I can't remember if I did a video for Tuesday or not. I didn't send it out, so that's a great reminder. Thank you. But I've been playing with grain.com and it kind of captures the video and makes it really easy to turn it into highlights.
Oh, cool.
So, yeah, I did one for what was that call yesterday? The expansion call yesterday. Let me see if I can find it. I could probably just do it on my screen, but how's everyone's week?
Busy,
A
busy
busy week.
week.
That's only a
Same.
couple words, Kathy. Sounds like you're tired.
Sorry. Yeah,
No
that's all
time
I
for
got
additional
today.
words.
I just
Very,
can't do it.
very busy week, but at least it's a long week. Well, for me, it's a long weekend.
Yes. We are going away for the weekend, just like to the closest big city to a hotel where the kids can swim.
Oh,
Um, but I am so excited to just get away from my house and the pets and
Dishes.
yeah, I don't do the dishes.
Oh, lucky you.
I know. My husband likes to do the dishes, so
I need to talk to
and
my husband.
Take advantage of that.
yeah, people have been asking me if I could clone him since we had our first baby because the baby was so cute. And then he likes dishes, and I'll take a picture of him vacuuming and put it on Facebook, and people are just like, "Oh, how do you do that?" I guess I got lucky. Okay, let's see. I think we can get started. It's 4 after, so we have Emily Amos from Uplift Content, and she's going to share the case studies study with us. Let me give you screen access so that you can share your screen.
sure. Thank you. All right. I'm just gonna oh my goodness, I have I have my laptop and my desktop, so I'm getting confused about which keyboard I should be using here. I thought I would start by introducing myself. So I'm Emily Amos. I'm the founder and CEO of Uplift Content. We work with B2B SaaS companies to write case studies, ebooks, and blog posts. And what we did, this was our second year in a row that we did some research on case studies. And one of the main reasons that we did this research is because we couldn't find any information online of other research that had been done on case studies. And, you know, we write a lot of blog posts for our own marketing purposes about case studies, and there were no statistics that we could link to. So that was one reason for doing this report. And then the second being, it's obviously just a great resource for everyone in the industry who is responsible or part of the team as part of the team producing case studies. So it's been a really big learning curve. This is the second year, but it's the first time that I've done our own research, and it was quite an experience, though I think this year was a lot smoother than last year, for sure. So let me share my screen here, and we can get started. Just one second. Okay, so a little background on the report. We sent out a survey in December, and we had 123 marketers complete it. And I think a few of you on the call actually did complete it. So thank you from the bottom of my heart. It is very challenging, obviously, to get people to complete surveys. And I can't tell you how much we all appreciate it. So the criteria for the survey was you needed to be on a team responsible for case studies, and you needed to work at a SaaS company. So most of the respondents were customer marketers or customer advocacy professionals. We got a few product marketers, we got a few content marketers who happened to do case studies as well. So before we dive in, I just want to talk about vocabulary first. And I'm a words person, so I thought it would be interesting to quickly chat about what we're going to call these things. I call them case studies, but I know that there's a number of you out there that really do not like the word case studies. So we've got options, right? We've got customer stories, we've got customer success stories. Everyone seemed to have their own preference. Last year, in last year's report, we actually surveyed and asked what people are calling these assets. And sorry, just one sec. I seem to have lost my notes here. So what we found was that 45% of respondents actually use the word case study as what they call it. Next in line is customer success stories, and the least used phrase is customer stories, which I found really interesting. You know, I use case studies because I think it's the most clear and direct way of talking about it. I also use it because I am marketing my company, and case studies is something people search for. People don't search for customer stories or customer success stories. It's not an SEO friendly, those are not SEO friendly phrases. So I have my own reasons for using it, and I know everyone has their own reasons for using it. So for this report and for this conversation, I'm going to be saying case studies. Please don't take offense, and please don't hate me. We know what we're all talking about here. So hopefully we can all be at peace with that. So let's dive in. So here's my little spiel. So 45% of respondents use case studies. That being said, larger companies with 20 plus case studies tend to prefer customer success stories. So that's pretty interesting. And then the least used term is case studies. All right. So for the report, I have 3 big takeaways that I want to talk about. Not sure why this is not flipping. Here we go. So takeaway number 1, case studies work. For the second year in a row, SaaS marketers have ranked case studies the #1 most effective marketing tactic to increase sales, which thrills me to no end, ahead of general website content, SEO, blog posts, social media, and other tactics. Here's the graph so that you can see what that looks like. So the blue is this year and the yellow is last year. So case studies are ranked a little bit less effective than they were last year, which is interesting. But as you can see, next in line, we've got SEO, then we've got general website content, email sequences, ebooks, white papers, etc., social media towards the bottom, and blog posts towards the bottom. So I don't know if this is because we surveyed customer marketers. I wonder if we interviewed a content marketer, if they would have put blog posts at the top, for example. Next year, we will be digging into this a little more. I'm going to open it up, though. Does anyone have any comments or insights?
I do. I was wondering if it went down this year because the pandemic, supposedly is over. So more people are doing live events or get-togethers.
That is a great insight to think about. And actually, I need to add that as one of the options for next year. So thank you for bringing that up. Does anybody else have any comments?
To add one more thing, but
Yeah.
I know 2 years ago when I started at my job during the pandemic, it was so easy to get case studies. I mean, I did like 60 in a year. And then the next year, 21, like 40. And this past year, 22, it was about 34. So I think fewer and fewer people are available now.
Available or just willing?
Willing. Well, probably both.
Yeah. And why is that, though? Why would they be less willing now, do you think?
They just have too many other priorities. Maybe they're in the office. Maybe they're traveling.
Yeah.
Circumstances change. So
Yeah, for sure. Anybody else want to chime in?
I have kind of a question. It's not going to be answerable, I don't think, but there seems to be this idea that case studies are very helpful for sales, and sales, of course, asks for them, and references. Like Jennifer said, she would be interested in adding references to this list. But I also hear from people that they don't feel like their case studies are very effective. And I wonder if it's just having that story to share that, like, is it having the actual story, or is it getting that story to the right people? Yeah, I guess I'm not very articulate with my question here. So basically, I was just saying, is it the idea that having a case study is there and that just helps to like solidify that, oh, okay, well, they do have people that are successful? Or do you think it's the actual, this case study performs better because of XYZ?
I don't have the answer for that, but I'd love to hear what everybody else thinks.
Okay.
I think, Mary, this is interesting for me. Emily and I actually talked a little bit about this last week, that I think what I'm trying to think through right now is the balance between how do you tell a story that sometimes can be so robust to cover all of the use cases that the person is doing. We have a pretty technical product, so people have these amazing use cases. We want to capture those. but oftentimes that just makes for a story that's way too long or a video that's way too long. And so I'm trying to find the balance of like, how do you really tell the full picture of the story, but also put it into content that a prospect is actually going to read or watch or whatever that looks like. And so that's kind of what I'm thinking about right now. Like, I think they are super valuable, but are they actually being read all the way through?
I wonder, Ashley, if
think
that's a question of creating nice little chunks or snippets, whether it's a video or a written case study where, you know, you have use case 1, use case 2, use case 3, and people can scan for what is most relevant for them. So they're not reading the whole thing. They're jumping to the pieces that are most interesting for them.
Yeah.
I think that we're finding that the modality is dependent on the goal. So for those longer stories where we're focused on the whole success framework, we're using video for that because it's easier for that to run in the background while people are doing other things. And then we go all out for those. Those are high production events for us, where we send out videographers and go the full route with production on them. And those stories, the video itself is sometimes 25 minutes long.
Oh, wow.
So it's a significant chunk of time. We also use video for the light-ended ones. And that's 3 questions. The whole thing might be 8 minutes total. But those stories that they do kind of the same thing, but the second one is more of a testimonial type structure. So, and then all of the printed stuff that goes in between, right? The traditional case study from the website, available in Seismic for our sales guys to get to, so they can reference it easily and ship it out to whomever they like. And they do like them better. You know, they like that. Although now that we're starting to do more video, they keep asking me, how come I don't do more? And I said,
And
I don't have
what's the
time.
answer? Is it budget or time?
I just don't have time. We're scheduling so many, as many things as we possibly can. And I can't fit more in.
Yeah. All right, let's move on to takeaway number 2. Whoops. So takeaway number 2, case studies are a growing priority. All of the survey respondents said case studies are a growing priority for them, which I found really interesting. On average, SaaS companies plan to produce 17 new case studies in 2023, compared with only 12 produced in 2022. And this represents a 42% increase. I'll show you the graph. So when we look at all companies together, that's where we get the 17 and the 12 with the 42% increase. If we look at smaller SaaS companies, so 500 employees or less, we're looking at 12 produced this year compared to 7 last year. And for larger SaaS companies, 500 plus employees, we're looking at 24 case studies produced this year, as opposed to 19 that were actually produced last year. Anybody have any comments or insights they'd like to share? Is anybody producing fewer is anyone planning to produce fewer case studies this year? All right, let's move on then. So takeaway number 3, case studies need to be better. Only 12% of SaaS marketers are very satisfied with their case studies overall, which to me means there's lots of room for improvement, and I think also some creativity. A key area for improvement is the metrics. Marketers rate metrics as very important for case studies, but they are rather dissatisfied with the metrics in their current case studies. Let's take a little look here at just the satisfaction graph that we have. So here's the 12% from this year, giving it a 5-star, 5 out of 5. The bulk obviously are in the middle. And to be fair, I think this is pretty common. I think we are all perfectionists and we, nothing's ever good enough. So we wouldn't give ourselves a 5 out of 5. We'd give ourselves a 4 out of 5 because there's always some room for improvement. So I don't think this is the end of the world. I do think it's pretty interesting though. That's a fairly significant number that have given themselves a 3 out of 5. And then a couple of folks are right down at the bottom. Anyone want to bring anything up for this one?
I think it's a question that you can take it both ways. Like, how satisfied are you with the case studies you produce? And how satisfied are you with your overall case studies like program? Because you can be like, I produce really great case studies, but at the same time feel like you wish you could get more case studies about certain use cases, or, a lot of people struggle with the anonymous case studies, or people who don't want to share because their companies don't allow them and all of that. So I think maybe that could be part of like how people answered.
For sure. Yeah. Surveys are great, but they don't give you the depth that you really want. So, this is just the tip of the iceberg.
Yeah,
for sure.
Absolutely.
So for the rest of this call, what I want to do is really just facilitate some conversations around some of the bigger challenges that we're all facing as we create case studies. So the number one thing that folks, I put up a little poll on the CMA Slack group, and then the primary thing people wanted to talk about were case study formats and what trends we're seeing. So that's the first one we're going to talk about, and we're going to aim for 10 minutes or so for each of the 4 topics that we have. We're going to talk about case study formats. We're going to talk about how to get meaningful metrics. We're going to talk about measuring the performance of your case studies. And if we have time, we'll just quickly talk about getting approvals for case studies. Of course, we can also talk about other things too. So please don't hesitate to, jump in with other questions or other points of interest. Mary, I'm not coordinated enough to read the chat comments and do this. So perhaps could you help me and let me know if there's a question that we should talk about as we go?
Yeah, I can do that.
Okay.
And what community did you post the question on? I know I answered, I just don't remember where I saw it.
Oh, it's yours. It's the CMA Weekly Slack group.
Wow. There's some egg on my face today.
All right, so let's hop in. We're going to talk about case study formats. So before we talk about which ones people want to try this year, I'm going to show you what people are currently using, and then we'll look at what people want to try. So here is what case study formats companies are currently using. So no big surprise. At the top, you see text, so HTML, so just on your web page, and then PDF text is right up there as well. So both are, around 3/4 of the respondents. The third one is interesting, social media posts, which is probably also not a huge surprise. And then at 58%, we've got text with video, so a text video combo, which I think is really popular as well. And then we've got slides, blog posts, video, infographics at the bottom. So let's move on to what people want to do more of or try in 2023. So video is the top format that people want to try to do more of in 2023. And then interestingly, we've got infographics, and then we've got the text video combo at 36%. And then we've got compilations or or collections. I was seeing a few folks do this at the end of 2022, and I thought it was really nice, putting together kind of a PDF resource of a compilation of case studies. So that is, those are the core stats. I would love to now turn it over and ask you all what formats you want to experiment with this year.
Oh, I could speak up. We actually have 2-page case studies. We have a 1-page one, which is more of a bullet form. But the problem is we have like 15 different product lines. So they're all a combination of different acquisitions. So they all the websites have different formats. So we're trying to be consistent. I know we want to make it a little more succinct. We do have these video snackables, which are very short, like a minute, well, 30 seconds to a minute long. But we're trying to experiment with carousels. I've seen them on LinkedIn, and I just wanted to know if anybody's doing that and how successful they are. We're still going to do the PDFs and the HTMLs, but on social, instead of doing the video snackables or a link to the case study, we're going to do the carousel.
We're doing our first one next week. I'm so excited. So I'll let you know how it goes.
Cool.
And Heather says podcast and video. Also, Leslie, I was thinking, has Sendoso done that? Because that sounds like something she would do.
What,
So
the podcast?
no, well, not the podcast, but the carousel.
Oh, yeah, I basically was leading that because we don't really have a social, so I'm kind of stepping in there. But yeah, then we are starting a podcast, and guess who's the host?
Probably you.
Yeah, I don't even know how I'm gonna fit that in, but I guess I'm the host of a new podcast. Fun.
That's awesome.
And so I haven't seen very many companies use podcasts for case studies. Leslie, do you want to talk a little bit more about that? Like, what would that look like?
Yeah. So, I mean, we're partnering with this company called Caspian, who, thank God, does all of the work, right? I just have to show up and talk. So that's amazing. They're very expensive. So, yeah, I think it's going to be great. But so we're throwing around ideas right now. We're kind of leaning towards, obviously, like ROI, right? So I think that, with direct mail, you spend a ton of money. And I think most people who haven't ventured into direct mail are like, well, come on, what are the guarantees here? So we're going to talk to all of our customers who are seeing that big ROI, or little, or like their steps to getting there, right? Because not everybody just starts out with 20 million in pipeline generated. So yeah, and then it's going to kind of be, so I'm not a very, like, obviously I can barely talk on this call, but I'm sick, so that's why. But I'm not very polished and enterprise, and I'm just very, weird girl energy. So we're going to make it fun, and I'm going to ask questions, and we're going to like talk about fumbles too, like lessons learned and all that stuff. So it will be helpful for both of our existing customers to hear, things that lessons learned, right, that they shouldn't do. And then also kind of massaging our prospects into, look, it's possible to see like massive returns on direct mail.
I love that. Is anybody else doing podcasts? Or I've been seeing a lot of little audio snippets as well. Is anybody experimenting with those?
We're doing, we have hot takes, which is
A hot take.
it's Ryan Dillon is one of our one of our VPs of sales, and he gets on a podcast in a LinkedIn Live, basically, with a customer or an industry expert, and he asks them questions while they progressively eat hot sauce on chicken wings.
Oh my
So-
God, that's
Oh,
amazing.
I like that. It's like a play off of that YouTube show, Hot Ones. Yeah.
Yeah,
I have-
and then we do a cool down after, like 2 weeks after, where we have a discussion about the session, and bring in additional commentators, other
Do they get
customers,
glasses
other
of
industry.
milk to go with it?
Those are the suggestions. It's not an automatic, but it is heavily suggested. And we did it live. We did one live at the SEDMA conference last year. So it was a huge hit, and it still is. And we're getting ready to start the next series. Couple of weeks, I think.
That's
when
amazing.
it drops.
What about the snackable videos? I love the idea. I think it kind of touches, Ashley, on what you were speaking about. What I'd love to know is how do you serve up the snacks? Is there a platter of snacks to choose from? Is it on a web page with text in between? What does that really look like? Was it Hope? Was it you that was mentioning the
Yeah.
snackable videos?
Yeah, well, we call our snackable videos. They're sort of a summary of our one pagers, and the one pagers have various solution. I mean, the challenge, solution, and results, and different bullet points. And then we don't really have the person speak. It's more like imagery and graphics and text.
Oh, I see. Gotcha.
I don't think it's that effective, to be honest with you. But
I think it would be interesting to see more companies use little videos on LinkedIn, but I'm not sure if customer story is great. But I think you could use like some outtakes from customers that would be interesting in just grabbing some attention as people go through LinkedIn.
Yeah.
We're doing the customer of the month stuff with, like, it's 3 questions, and the entire video gets published to the community. But question number 2 is why TI? Why did they choose our software? And that goes out to social media, and that's going to be carouseled on the website once we have enough of them. But those are only maybe 90 seconds.
I think the compilation of case studies could be really interesting too, because you could show a few different use cases that might be good for that company, or like other teams if you want to do expansion or something like that.
Oh my God, that's my newsletter topic for tomorrow.
What, expansion?
No, I can't say the word compilation studies. I can type it. Compilation.
I think there's lots of possibilities with that concept of compilation, pulling use cases across 5 customers, for example, pulling common challenges across 5 customers. I think it has so much room for a variety of content to be produced. There's lots of potential there.
Yeah, I'm kind of this year I want to work smarter, not harder. So it's like a lot of repurposing stuff. One of the things when you were talking about video snippets, I was like, well, why don't I just go back into all of the events that I did last year and like have my associate kind of go through and pull out those video snippets that are like really, helpful or enlightening or something, and then post those on LinkedIn or pass them over to the university, stuff like that.
Yeah, for sure. Any last thoughts before we move on to the next topic?
Ashley said we have slides for sales like this, but I've been thinking about blogs or other ways to do this.
Just on the compilations, like we have a few
Okay.
slides that go through either use cases or like business outcomes. But just today, this came up where obviously sales needs more help right now with certain things. And so I'm like, we might not have a full customer story on that exact topic, but we have like little snippets in multiple stories and we could pull them all together in a blog or something to create something a little more robust on certain use cases or topics.
Yeah.
That's a good point. I think infographics in a compilation of case studies would be fun. Expensive, but fun.
I feel like infographics could be amazing, but I feel like people are tapped out with their creativity a little bit. Like we're all just under the gun to create case studies, and there's so many other things. I think infographics of all of those things listed requires the most thinking outside the box around how do we communicate the key points in a visual way. And I think that's probably why it doesn't get used very much, right? It's only around 19%, but it's something we all think could be really interesting. But it requires a lot of different thinking that maybe we're not used to doing.
Yeah.
I've been really active on Fiverr lately. And so I'd be interested in kind of poking around there and with my marketing content people that I have on Fiverr and just be like, hey, what?
Yeah.
You be creative for me. Thank you.
Yeah. I'd love if you experiment with that, let me know. I'd love to see it.
Yeah.
Okay, so next topic is metrics and how to get more meaningful metrics. So in the report, we found a number of metrics kept coming up in the survey. So most marketers say that impact of results is the number one consideration when choosing which stories to tell. So that's interesting. 70% of respondents said that identifying metrics is one of the biggest challenges when it comes to producing quality case studies. And 76% of SaaS companies have metrics in at least half of their case studies. 29% have them in almost all of their case studies. And I think it was 4% don't have metrics at all. So in terms of how do we get those metrics, it's not a huge surprise that 88% ask the customer during the interview itself. 48% email the customer before or after the interview. 39% have the account manager work with the customer to create benchmarks. And then 36% use their own software to find customer results. I would love to open up the floor and ask if anyone has any different ways that they get metrics or any ways that they have found to be more effective.
We will sometimes, like our account manager might have metrics that are not necessarily something the customer's reporting on, if that makes sense. And so we will sometimes go to them and say, hey, we noticed that you achieved this in the product, or your ranking here, and almost like give them the metrics and say, can we use these in the case study? We've also been talking about sort of combining the compilation and case studies, doing almost like a worksheet where we ask for specific metrics, and we might not use them all in the case study, but we're trying to get closer to, like, on average, our customers save X dollars, or they're generating X number of MQLs. And right now we can't really do that because each case study they all have metrics, but they're very different depending on the story. And so trying to get some sort of baseline so we can start pulling, like, what is the average impact too.
Yeah, I love that.
Ours
I'm
is kind of
very
easier too,
prescriptive.
because we get um, the option. There's ROI metrics that are built into customer education, right? There's these standards, and we can say pre-implementation, what was your number? Did it exist even? And post-implementation, now that we're 18 months in, whatever, how has that number changed? And that gives us the baseline. And we can say there's 10 metrics that we're going to ask you about. And what we see a lot of the time is that they either weren't calculating them to start, and now they can because they have the tools to measure, or their numbers significantly jumped because they now have better ways to measure.
And where does that happen in the process, Christine? Is it during the onboarding that you set the baseline numbers?
It's through, yeah, it starts when we do that first handoff at onboarding, and they start doing the diligence in terms of implementation. So they start asking those questions. And then of course, when they start asking about outcomes, like where are we going with this? What's the end goal? Then those become the numbers that I will probably use, because those are the ones that were important to them, to the customer.
Yeah.
As long as they align with the value, the value props that we're putting out with the case studies.
Right.
Sorry, Leslie, go ahead.
Oh yeah, no, I was just going to say that we're pretty prescriptive because we're, relatively new category, direct marketing automation. And so we will give them the formulas like, here, this is what, you should go find out before we have the interview. And so we have to be, there's a level of like education because, this is relatively new. So, and we don't do it in a, like, if you don't do this, you're dead to me. It's just like a more of a helpful hand and like, hey, did you know that you could also measure this way? So we see success with that.
Anybody else? Allison or Kyle, Kathy? Love to hear what you guys do.
If I could get any of my customers to publicly share their metrics in any form, I would be happy.
What's the challenge there?
I work in cybersecurity where everybody is scared to say anything about anything.
Right. Say no
I
more.
just had a CISO actually excited to do a webinar with me at like a huge company, and his comms told him no. And
Right.
I just got that email an hour ago. So still a little salty about that, but
So what do you do, Kyle? What can you do? What do you do?
I don't know. I'm still figuring that out. There's definitely, I guess, a focus on trying to grow our advocates using like internal mechanisms like our technical advisory board and CISO advisory board, and hopefully growing those to be external advocates as well. But yeah, it's a challenge.
So I imagine though you could get testimonials and things about the success that they're having now. You just can't get the full story, right? Because no one wants to talk about the breach or the challenge that set them on the path towards you.
Yeah. And sometimes it's not even a breach or a challenge. It's like federal compliance mandates and things like that. So there's not always a super sexy story behind it, but we do improve outcomes for our customers. And then even then with something like decreasing time to remediation for vulnerabilities, sometimes they still can't even share those more harmless metrics out publicly.
And why is that?
Comms or legal of their company says no. Or the customer themselves is hesitant to even tell us in the first place.
Wow. You have got your work cut out for you then.
Yeah.
You have got to be the most creative of probably everyone on this panel.
Well, I don't know about that, but I've been at the company for 7 months and my first like customer blog is coming out next week. And I've been working on that since November.
Oh, wow. Congratulations. That's amazing.
Thanks.
Anybody else? Jennifer, Maria?
I have a question.
Yeah, sorry, I've been kind of quiet. I don't get involved in a lot of the case study metrics or the case studies. So I don't have no knowledge. I know at my last company, we had a ton of information around this. But we don't do it here at BMC. Unfortunately, we're trying to beef up that area and put some best practices in place. So this has all been really helpful.
Excellent.
And for us, we don't really do case studies, but we do have customer experience interviews. So sometimes you do get maybe not some specific metrics, but you get ideas of the program and how, they're using us through that.
What's a customer experience interview, Allison?
So we ask them questions about their program and also how they're using our solution, Reference Edge. And we put that under our advocate section on our website.
Cool.
So these are just questions that we ask them. We have an interview with them and then we publish it in written form on the website.
Yeah, I like that. Kathy, were you gonna say something?
I put it in chat. I was just wondering in terms of metrics, what you measure, what are your favorite things to measure?
I mean, ultimately, it tends to come down to money and time. So making money, saving time, and then obviously the variations on that, and then it would be customer specific, software specific, customer specific. But I would love to hear what everyone else likes to try and focus on.
For getting the metrics from your customers, or have we?
I think Kathy's question was around like, what are the best metrics to try and
right.
Grab?
Okay.
Well, let's put some thought into that. In the meantime, let's move on to performance. How do we measure the performance of our case studies? So this chart is very long and it's kind of probably a bit hard to read, but interestingly, 30% of SaaS marketers say that they don't measure case study performance at all because they lack the time, resources, or know-how to do so. The rest of the respondents use a wide variety of tactics, as you can see here. The top ones being measuring landing page traffic, getting feedback or anecdotal stories from sales reps about how they're using them and which ones they prefer to use. And then clicks from social would be so that makes up the top three. And then obviously there's lots and lots of other ones too. I would probably put them in the kind of the analytics bucket, and then more of the anecdotal pieces. I think that measuring the performance of case studies is very challenging, but I do think it's important. That being said, I was speaking with a customer last week, and I was asking her about how they measured the performance of their case studies, and she said that they don't. And I asked if they don't, how do they justify the budget for the case studies? For example, if they wanted to get more budget, how do they justify that if they don't measure the performance of the case studies? And she said that she doesn't have to justify the performance of the case studies. She says that everyone understands how important they are, and that the budget for them is so small in comparison to all of the other marketing initiatives that it is never an issue for her. So that's just one take, but I would love to hear how the rest of you feel about case study measurement in terms of performance and how you do that. Who would like to hop in first?
Is anyone on here measuring case studies? Or are you here to learn more about it?
Unfortunately, we are not measuring case studies.
Okay.
Why is that, Maria? Is it lack
Well,
of time or?
So we're revamping the whole way really advocacy and customer stories are done at BMC. And a large part of what we're doing right now is taking the current customer stories that are on there. A lot of them are just old, frankly. We need to retire them. Two is we're revamping them into kind of an enhanced brand, consistent look and feel across the board. And then our newer stories, we're putting obviously more work into those. Some are both compilation of both written stories and video. And we're at the same time kind of doing a digital transformation with our website where we're looking at more things around best practices and how to measure. So I'm just going to be working with myself and then my colleague, working to make sure these things are done. They just haven't done them. They had an advocacy group like 5 years ago, and the program basically, when the person left, the program went away. So they've been kind of ad hoc doing things over a year and a half. And customer stories is one of the things on our plate to really revamp and get more up, because obviously we need to do that. So they just need to be revamped overall. There's also buried on our site, which is one of the things when I was interviewing, I'm like, definitely change that. Like you need to lead with your customers, and the stories are buried. So it's, again, stuff we need to do that's critical because we all recognize the importance. It's just getting all the resources in alignment.
Yeah, for sure. Rachel, what about you or Leslie? I'm just looking through the folks that are on the call to see if anyone else has anything to add. How are you measuring case studies? Or how would you like to measure case studies?
I would say right now we're measuring them in a lot of the ways that are listed here. So we're looking at traffic to the pages, we're looking at impressions and clicks on social. We're capturing a lot of anecdotal feedback. And then we also use a content management system, HighSpot. And so I'm able to see which customer stories are being pitched by the sales teams most often. So that's usually what I'm looking at to measure, are these successful or not? I feel like the piece that I'm missing that I want to get to, and I don't totally know how to cleanly, is the impact on revenue. So like how often in a deal are they using the case story content, and does that then lead to pipeline generated? I think like I can sort of messy back of the napkin do that almost like anecdotal metric, which is not how I want to be doing it. So that's what I'm trying to figure out this year.
Yeah, now
do you have any ideas?
We are doing that from the, I'm sorry to interrupt. We are doing that from the perspective, like if a request comes into our team to fulfill, like they need a case study, et cetera, we are able to do that through Reference Edge to the opportunity. We can track that in terms of like opportunities closed, one, and if we would support it by just providing that. Obviously, I think tracking a actual reference, like a peer-to-peer reference, is a little bit easier to explain and be valuable to our leadership in terms of the value add we had versus if we just send a case study rather. But we do track it through Reference Edge today.
I would say that a company that I'm working with, we don't really track the case studies performance because one, we we need so many more, even though we have some, and the team that's creating them is doing a great job, but we need so many more that we have to just keep plugging along, and whether they're performing really well or not, like we've already invested so much into creating them that maybe it's just better to not know. At some point, we'd probably get more interested in like looking at how it's affecting revenue and all of that, but it also feels like it's something that we can't really measure right now, so just keep plugging along and making them. I'm sure that's not super helpful though.
if you were to measure them, what approach do you think you would take?
I think the landing page traffic, the anecdotal things from like the information from sales, and just like we're building out the advocacy program right now, but asking others what, asking our advocates if anything what really stood out for them, and really just comparing it to each one to the other case studies, to see, this one has a lot more traffic, this one has a lot more feedback, things like that.
Yeah, for sure. Allison, or who else? Hope. I won't ask you, Kyle.
What about you, Emily? How does your customers, like, what are they looking for when kind of measuring performance?
Many of them aren't measuring the performance. This is my little soapbox. It's something I am trying to encourage. I know that it's messy and it's hard, but I do think it's worthwhile to even just pick a few ways, even though they may not be perfect. Landing page traffic, for example. Landing page traffic is interesting, but it depends so heavily. It can be skewed so heavily by how you promote different case studies. So if you promote case study A much more than case study B, you're likely going to see more landing page traffic for case study A. Is it because case study A is a better story, or it has a more a use case that is more relevant? I mean, there's so many factors. It does make it very challenging for sure.
Yeah, I can imagine, especially from your point of view with creating the content for them. Of course, you want them to measure it so you can get your own stories as well.
Yeah, I mean, yes, I am, yes, I would love to be able to know whether our stories are working, for sure. I think too, the thing that I think sounds like it has the most potential is the things like High Spot, where you can see which stories the sales folks are using the most. I think that is really interesting. Why are they using this one the most? Is it because that's the one they're most familiar with, that they keep going back to the same ones because they know them, they don't have to think about it? But on the flip side, why do they keep asking for more case studies if they keep going back to their old favorites? I don't know. This is just food for thought. I would love to hear everyone else's thoughts on that.
It's murky.
In my last organization, our sales enablement team was responsible for standing up the content for the sales and BDR team. And there were so many moving parts flying around, they hadn't indexed everything properly. And, the teams did admit they kept going back to the ones they were introduced to when they first onboarded with the company. So, that's a huge problem. So, working with whatever teams need to be involved to make sure that the content is evangelized, indexed properly, that new employees know about the availability of the content. That's huge.
Yeah, I mean, you have to do an inside sales job, right? Communicating
yes.
about the new ones that they probably were asking for.
Yes, exactly. And to do that repeatedly, as there's churn and staff.
Yeah, for sure. Well, I see that we're coming up on our hour. So Mary, do you want to take over and wrap up?
Sure. Thank you all for coming. And we're not done with case studies. On Thursday of next week, Joel Kletke from Case Study Buddies is coming to do a monthly call on case studies, which will be great and useful too. And Emily has a link where you can download the entire report. Wow, I'm really good at wrapping up calls. And yeah, thank you all for coming, and I'll get the recording up about this. And yeah, when you have extra questions, Emily's in the community, so pop them in there.
Thank you.
Emily.
Thanks, Emily.
Thanks,
Emily.
everybody. It was great to meet you all.
Wait, Emily.
Thank you.
Hi.
Emily. I'm just kidding.
Yes.
Hi.
Hi.
Can I post this in my newsletter tomorrow?
Of course. I would love that. Thank you.
Okay, cool. All right. Now everybody.
I love your newsletter, Leslie. It's
Oh.
just got so many good things in it.
Thank you. Yeah, it is a time suck. So I gotta get up.
As is most things we create.
Yeah. No, it's fine. Okay, cool. Well, thank you again, everyone.
Thanks, everybody. Bye-bye.